Olá, tudo bem? Aqui é o Jorge, mais um episódio de Case of Distrust, episódio 9. A gente tá chegando perto do episódio 10, né, onde eu vou dar uma pausinha. Mas enfim, a gente acabou de sair do telefone com o Shipman, a gente descobriu um monte de coisa sobre o Connor Green e sobre quem ele era antes, provavelmente, o Connor Bragg, lá em St. Louis. Então vamos pra delegacia agora. Dá uma enxugada aí. So what's the news on Green? Frankie asked as I was headed up the stairs. Now it seemed like I had all the details. I summarized it for him. So the total wrap? Green isn't really green at all. He's Bragg the Jester, a former member of Egan's Rats from St. Louis. He's Bragg? Frankie was shocked. But he's been here a while, Malone. Sure, I said, but only since 1920. He could pay off his debts in Missouri, so he faked his death and he couldn't pay off his debts in Missouri, so he faked his death and moved to San Francisco. He's been longing to go back, but he needs a way to settle his score before he can show his face again. Is that where his bootlegging comes in? Uh-huh. Green set up a sham rum running scheme. He bought local wine but claimed to get it at lower prices from Canada. He convinced Tiny Paul to front him a heap of cash for it. Instead of providing the wine, he's planning to skip town with Paul's money, disappearing to St. Louis with enough dough to pay back his debts. But no. He already faked his death once, so he'll do it again here? Frankie asked. That's right. His plan is similar to his last one. Hire a detective claiming he's scared for his life, fake his death, then know the police won't bother with underground violence. Eu ia falar isso. Se ele contratou um detetive da outra vez pra fingir, ele contratou agora pra fingir a mesma coisa. Mas enfim, vamos lá. Falando vamos lá muito dessa vez. Vamos lá. Frankie looked at me with a blank stare. Seems like all the pieces fit, he said. So he just hired you as cover? I sighed. Seems like it. Don't worry about that. Frankie started saying, but I cut him off. I'm going to see Shipman now. I'll sweep away this mess and come back and see you. Have a stiff drink ready, I instructed. Just be careful, Malone. Egan's rats have a reputation. They can be ruthless. I turned and walked up the stairs. Vamos lá. Police stand. There was only one place to go. Green had hired me for cover so that he could blow down. Shipman held the final evidence to sink that plan. I needed to get to the station. É só aí. Conversar com o taxista, talvez? I stepped in the taxi cab and was consumed with my own thoughts about the case. I'd finally caught my break, but it was a dud. I hadn't realized it, but I had been reveling in real detective work. Once I learned it was all bunk, my mind reverted to its incessant nagging. I wondered if I was just a puppet to some two-bit mobster. I was hardly bringing much justice to anybody, which made me unsure of what exactly it was that I was doing. I suppose I was wasting my time. Não, mano, você vai capturar mobster, mafioso. It all came back to me, basic premise. To the same basic premise. You're failing, my inner voice said. Que isso? I began to feel nauseous in the car. My mind repeated its last thought. You are failing. Que isso? Não, tá tranquilo. And then everything turned to black. Okay. As if someone had shut all the lights. Ai, caralho. My naked arms faded into the view. They emitted a soft white glow. I waved them in front of me, leaving streaks in my vision. Between the streaks it appeared in the distance. I could hardly see, but as the object below, the clarity came to me. Then I understood what it was. Louis' gray coat. I floated towards it. I reached to grab the coat, which was when I saw the needles. No, not needles, glass, shards falling all around me. One piece wedged itself deep in my right elbow. I grimaced, but I was unable to make any noise or movements. Nossa, no cotovelo, mano. But then, as suddenly as the rain had started, it stopped. Cara, sabe que eu tô com medo que seja o Frankie que tenha me envenenado. Isso vai ser mancada. I looked upward with caution, wary of the rain's return. But above me, I saw the gray coat. It was no longer billowing. It was rigid, a shield against me, shield against the terrible rain. I started falling, slowly at first, but quickly it gained speed. It came upon me and enveloped me completed. It was suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I let out a gasp, and then the light, meu Deus, it pierced my eye sockets, hitting the back of my skull like a hammer on an anvil. I directed all my energy into my lungs and forced out a yell. That helped. Everything became quiet. Olha, a música. I could breathe deeply. I noticed someone beside me. He gradually came into focus. Oh, Shipman. Shipman showed his teeth in a big smile. Vision. Caraca. I looked up at him from my laying position on the Murphy bed. He swung his leg over the chair and sat beside me. Thought you'd never come around, he said. What happened? I tried to ask him something, but another bolt of pain raced up my elbow. All I managed was a groan. Relax, BC, just a few scratches. O carro bateu. Pode crer, que susto, cara. Quite the auto crash. Flew straight through the front window. They took out a large piece of glass from your right arm. Caralho. I remember none of that. I mumbled the word auto crash to myself. I wondered how bad the accident must have been. Shipman removed a flask from his pocket, unscrewed the top, and handed it to me. Not the best hooch, but might get rid of that banging in your head. I took a swig. I closed my eyes and sighed a deep breath as its warmth burned down my throat. I know modern medicine doubts it, but that gulp of moonshine helped. I went to give the flask back to Shipman, but he put out a hand to stop me. Hang on to it. Might need another swig after what I'm about to tell you. I propped myself up on my left shoulder to listen. About Green's case, the two of us figured he was going to fake his own death. Shipman clipped his tongue to his teeth and looked towards the floor. That ain't happening. Eita. Last night, Connor Green was shot through the heart twice. Meu Deus. What? I shouted. The exclamation was impulsive. I swung my legs quickly around and sat on the edge of the bed. My headache had suddenly vanished. Oh, there, Shipman said. Look, been here with you all night, he added quickly. In that chair beside the bed. Just telephoned the station to check in, and that's a rap they gave me. Told them what I know from you, and they said they'd chase it up. How do you know it was him? Another involuntary question. I was running on instinct. BC, faking your death involves a mangled body. Shot through the chest. His face is still intact. Whatever Green was planning on doing, he didn't get that far. Ay caralho, and we looked it up. He doesn't have a twin. That would be too easy, Shipman grinned. Green hired you for this case, he continued. Gives you every right to follow it up if you want. That said, he was likely taking you for a ride. Wouldn't blame you if you want to drop it. But I like your help, EC. You know the case. Could use your head even if it's been a little bumped. Once you're feeling better, I'll be at the station. Come find me there. Shipman stood up and cracked his back. Opa, Maybe I'll catch some shut-eye on top of my desk too. Sure beats that chair you got. He turned and walked out. I stood from the creaking bed and surveyed the cluttered apartment. Oh goddamn. The cat slept at the foot of the bed. I scratched behind his ear, and he seemed to like that. Cara, que loucura! Que porra é essa? I had taken copies of old murder cases. Aquela mesma coisa, né? Isso aí a gente já viu. That lamp had belonged to my uncle Lewis. He'd been an SFPD officer, one who argued policewomen could be good detectives even while the others jeered at me. I knew he'd been right, but my current workload didn't help that claim. I thought about Lewis more often than I wanted. I was lousy at handling the emotions behind those thoughts. Packaged cigarettes were the latest trend, but I still preferred to roll my own. The ashtray was evidence that it was a practiced skill. I suppose I had a lot of free time back then. Aqui embaixo, a newspaper was flopped on the floor. Its headline about the death of Lenin, leader of the Red Menace sweeping Russia. It seemed the Bolsheviks had lost their head. Pois é, pesadíssimo. A queda da União Soviética foi aí, né? Não foi em 91, mas assim, que mudou tudo. My old notebook, now filled to the brim. I wrote everything down, even the minor details. Never know what can be useful. The first half had my old cases, details from the beats I used to walk in my policewoman days. Of course, policewomen were forbidden from going on patrol, but Lewis often overlooked that role. Pode crer, cara. Olha, acho que o jeito é ir por aí, né? I stared at the doorway and took a deep breath. I suppose I owe Shipman enough to help solve the case, even if Green had given me the runaround. After all, what type of detective would leave a case half solved? Pois é. There was only one place to go. Although Green had just been using me, his life had apparently been in danger all along. I resolved to find his killer. I headed to the North Beach station for any information Shipman could give me before starting the chase. Vamos lá. Sem bater, dessa vez, né? Sem quase morrer. I waved down a taxi cab and was on my way. I thought I might talk with the driver to pass the time. Vamos lá. É verdade. Some weather, ain't it? He said with a southern drawl. It's San Francisco, I replied. Expect fog and bring a jacket. Wish I'd known that come from Missouri. Maybe would have stayed on the river. There were always recent transplants to the city. Where in Missouri? Porque Missouri tem St. Louis. Where are you from? I asked. A little town called Hannibal. Same place as Mark Twain, though by the time I was born, he'd moved to bigger parts of the country. But you know, I recently heard a quote of his. The coldest winter I've ever spent was a summer in San Francisco. Pois é, he laughed at himself. We talked for a while about his youth, his bucolic hometown, the crack of summertime thunderstorms, and his adventures down the Mississippi River. Eventually, we rode to my destination, but before leaving, I asked, "Did Mark Twain really say that about San Francisco?" The driver smiled and shook his head. "No, but if I tell you he did, at least you remember a quote that's mine. Olha só." I chuckled and left the taxi cab. The headquarters building dominated the corner of Kearny and Washington and Chinatown. Eu já vi isso. Mas eu vou parar o episódio aqui. Já tá dando o horário e a gente viu uma cacetada de coisa esse episódio. Um monte de coisa aconteceu, a gente quase morreu. O Conor Green realmente morreu. Talvez ele tenha morrido, talvez não. Provavelmente sim. Enfim, tudo isso fica pro próximo episódio, episódio 10. Tomara que seja o último, porque senão eu vou fazer a pausa, voltar pro Hollow Knight, e aí só volta tipo em novembro, dezembro. Os episódios finais de Case of Distrust. Mas, enfim. Vamos lá. Até a próxima. Espero que você esteja gostando. Um beijão.